Events told by their main figures. Research findings that transcend our people's views.
Monsanto se ve entre un buen sector de los agricultores como una gran amenaza.
Hay un montón de gente que se va a España a trabajar, a otro sitio a trabajar. No tienes que estar aquí siempre para que ayude a tu pueblo.
Desde entonces estoy buscando a mi nieto. Por gente liberada, he sabido que es un varón. Hace poco ha cumplido 6 años. Alguien lo tiene.
No somos simples estudiantes que venimos, entramos, escuchamos la clase de un profesor y después nos levantamos y nos vamos, sino que entendemos lo que pasa y sobre todo tenemos que ser sujetos de cambio frente a lo que pasa y tenemos que tener un rol en nuestra educación y en nuestra sociedad.
Telesur Report on Monday, only on Telesur. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. The World Today. On Monday, only on Telesur. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. The World Today. On Monday, only on Telesur.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Telesur English. This is From the South, our news brief from Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Ray Gomez and we start this new edition right now. "14 days after Hurricane Maria wreaked havoc across Puerto Rico, the governor Ricardo Rosselló says the distribution of fuel is gradually being restored. But the humanitarian situation in much of the island remains critical, with no electricity or communications. Shortages of water and food are also widespread. The U.S. President Donald Trump is due to visit Puerto Rico on Tuesday. people in the northeast of Puerto Rico are still threatened by a dam that was dangerously damaged by Hurricane Maria. They complain the authorities haven't given them enough information. Our team on the ground has the story.
Repair crews work against the clock to fix the damage to the dam on Lake Oaxaca. The cracks that appeared after Hurricane Maria have everyone on alert. Don Ismael Rivera hasn't slept at home since September the 22nd, when his community was evacuated for fear of flooding. When he can, he comes back to check on his dogs and his belongings.
It's been exhausting, but we've also learned from this. Because in all these years, we've never experienced anything like it. There was a lot of confusion. You can imagine how we felt.
Everyone here feels the uncertainty over the future of the dam, which was built in 1929.
I haven't been able to see my father because he's in Isabela and we have no gasoline. We have no way of communicating. The threat for the river is present all the time. We're afraid of going out because it could embark and sweep us away.
In this part of the island, the damage from the hurricane is obvious. Here in Quebradillas, they've had no drinking water since September the 20th. 2 weeks later, they're getting very limited deliveries of water, and they also lack food.
I didn't think it would do anything, but it was a big one. It did a lot of damage here. It brought down the avocado trees and everything.
The electricity system and telecommunications will take up to 6 months to get up and running again. The solar energy farms and some of the fuel depots were also damaged.
The relief effort in Dominica is slowly reaching more of those affected by Hurricane Maria, which destroyed much of the Caribbean island more than 2 weeks ago. There are still severe shortages of energy and water, but supplies are now reaching most of the outlying areas. Hotlines have been set up, and many medical facilities are working with help from international teams. Our correspondent in Dominica, Reagan Veen, has been following one of the Cuban medical teams bringing relief to those injured by Hurricane Maria. This is his report.
A secondary school. Partially destroyed by Hurricane Maria, it's now a shelter for those without a home. Young ones play outside, a distraction between meals. The elderly here are given food first, the first of 3 meals daily. Some sit in silence, wondering what's next. They've all been here for about a week, sitting, hoping, praying. Today, an unexpected surprise. Doctors from a neighboring Caribbean island, Cuba.
Y bueno, desde el punto de vista de las condiciones ambientales vemos que hay una gran cantidad de residuales.
So waste here, and this represents a risk for the populations because of the vectors, the mosquitoes. We have also accumulated water in some areas, and which could cause mosquitoes, and they spread diseases such as dengue, chikungunya, and some others. There's no water is not.
The Cubans were here in Dominica before Hurricane Maria struck. With a permanent medical station set up on the island, they were the first international responders. Once again, the hand of solidarity from the Cubans.
But now is not time for tea.
These are the heroes after Hurricane Maria, here to work, give relief, to heal. An old man with a diabetic dilemma, his toes cut off to save the foot. The date he returns home remains unknown.
I need to go to my home. I don't deserve to be here.
He does not go unseen. His is a tale all too familiar in this hurricane month of September. There are shelters like these all across the island. thousands to feed, thousands more to heal. But for today, their pain takes a pause. Regan Devines for Telesur in Russo, Dominica.
At least 55 or 59 people were killed and 517 more injured when a gunman opened fire at a country music festival in Las Vegas. The gunman has been named as 64-year-old Stephen Paddock, a local property manager who reportedly turned the gun on himself when police entered the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, where he was hiding out. Police found 10 rifles in the hotel room. Around 22,000 revelers were attending the Route 91 Country Music Festival when Paddock opened fire. The incident is being described as the deadliest shooting in recent U.S. history. As you have seen, let's go live to Washington, D.C. and our correspondent Francesca Emanuele. Francesca, hello. Just a few minutes earlier, authorities from Vegas held a press conference on the incident. What did they say?
Good afternoon, Ray. Thank you. They updated the information about the massacre. As you said, 59 people killed and 527 injured. Who led the press conference was the sheriff, Joseph Lombardo, who said that the police found 18 guns at the house of the perpetrator. Remember that almost 20 guns were found at the room that he was occupying in the Hotel Mandalay in Las Vegas, from where he committed the crime. Different authorities from Nevada were part of the press conference. They shared that more than $1 million were collected by donors through a website called GoFundMe from all over the country, and they confirmed that there is no basis to think that the perpetrator, Stephen Paddock, had any connection with a terrorist group.
According to that, Francesca, there was a claim from the Islamic State group that it was responsible. So you say that has not been confirmed, really?
Yeah, that's correct. The FBI said 5 hours ago, more or less, that was a lie, that there is no basis to think that this guy, who they call a lonely wolf, had any connections with any terrorist group, right?
Francesca, thank you very much. Francesca Emanuele from Washington, D.C., our correspondent. More news in a minute. Stay with us, please. A judge in Ecuador has granted the Attorney General's request for the detention of the Vice President Jorge Glass. Glass faces charges over his alleged connection to a corruption scandal involving the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. Glass reacted to the news, saying he is not going anywhere. The Vice President has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and said he would welcome a trial in order to clear his name. Let's go live now to Quito and my colleague, Cien Gray. Cien, hello. Has the judge, Miguel Jurado, ruled on the case involving the president, Jorge Glass? Did he make any decision, and what comes next?
Jorge Glass and his uncle, Ricardo Riviera, detained on a preventative detention order. We can now tell you that that preventative detention order has been granted. According to the judge, it was granted because of reasons of illicit association. Now, this is in relation to the Odebrecht construction scandal. A former executive of the company had accused the vice president and his uncle of corruption. Vice President Jorge Glass has always vehemently denied those accusations. He says he is not afraid of the legal systems, and he fully intends to cooperate with the order. Now, Vice President Glass has responded to the judge's order. He says he is innocent, but he will comply with Ecuadorian law and he will comply with the judge's order. So we can tell you that the Attorney General's request for a preventative detention of Vice President Jorge Glass has been granted. This is for Vice President Jorge Glass and his uncle Ricardo Rivera, has been granted for reasons of illicit association. The Vice President's assets have been frozen. He will be detained in prison. Now, just to be clear, a preventative detention is not a punitive punishment. It does not mean that the Vice President or his uncle are guilty of anything, nor should it prejudice the case, the Odebrecht corruption case that they're meant to be facing. It ought not prejudice that particular case, but it was done because it may have been assumed that both were flight risk. They will now remain in Ecuador in prison, but again, this is not a punitive punishment, and it has been granted today. This is a fast developing situation. We literally only just got the information or the update. So we would advise our viewers to keep on watching Telesio Television, to keep on following our website, all of our social media networks. We will continue to update you on this particular situation. So again, for clarity, earlier today, Attorney General Carlos Baca applied for both the Vice President Jorge Glass and his uncle Ricardo Rivera to be detained under a preventative detention order. That detention has been granted. Their assets have been frozen and they will be held in prison, but this is not a punitive detention. And we will keep you updated on this particular situation as it continues to develop. So back to you in Caracas, Ray.
Although Vice President Jorge Glass said he weren't going anywhere. Thank you very much, our colleague Sigini from Quito in Ecuador. On Sunday, a bilateral ceasefire between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army, or ELN, came into effect. This is part of a peace talk underway between the two sides in Ecuador.
At 12 a.m. on Sunday morning, President Juan Manuel Santos signed the document which has filled the hearts of Colombians with hope. As Colombians face what could be the end of the armed conflict, this is the first time that the ELN and the government have agreed to end all hostilities. The ceasefire will now allow the peace talks to continue.
The bilateral ceasefire is one of Colombia's most historic moments, and since the death of Gaitán in 1948 till today, it will be the first time that we will not have any political violence. So this is really good news, but it is also a really strong humanitarian message that is given to almost 7 regions in the country where the ELN operated, as well as populations that live in regions littered with mines in the middle of the combat. This is important news.
3 months is the duration agreed for the ceasefire, lasting until January 9. While the news has spread hope, the concerns have not yet disappeared. Some parties in Congress have called on both the government and the ELN to respect the protocols agreed regarding the protection of social leaders and human rights defenders when the ceasefire begins.
The regulations established by the United Nations, the Catholic Church and all of the parties involved will need to be verified, because they will need to be effective in order to help reduce the violence against social leaders. We need to clarify what is behind the crimes that are committed against the population that is simply defending its territory.
In the next few months, commissions will be set up to make sure that the ceasefire agreement is fulfilled. This will also prevent any incidents that could sabotage the agreement. The Catholic Church will be in charge, together with 50 members of the United Nations, who were also involved in the peace process with the FARC. Despite this, fears remain, as there is still a paramilitary presence in the regions.
Free movement zones and ways to verify the agreements are being created, but this will be substantially different depending on the location. Obviously, it will be complex in the Choco department where there are fights within the ELN and the Gulf Cartel, because at any moment the military could intervene.
The commander of the ELN, Nicolás Rodriguez, has promised that the ELN is committed to fulfilling the bilateral ceasefire, and the Colombian military will suspend all actions against the former guerrilla group.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. On Sunday, over 2.26 million people turned out of the Catalonia independence referendum, and 19% of them voted in favor of secession. However, police brutality on the day marred the vote. Images spread across social media of police firing rubber bullets, hitting people with batons, and violently removing potential voters from polling stations. At least 800 people were reported injured. Despite the repression, many polling stations remain open, especially in areas supervised by the police. Although many Catalans see the vote as a huge success, the ballot will have no legal status, as it has been blocked by Spain's Constitutional Court, which ruled the vote at odds with the 1978 Constitution.
Abuelos, niños, grandparents, children, women, all crying, everyone suffering, and why? Just because they want to vote, because they want democracy, because they want to be regular people with rights.
While the vote did occur as planned, several world leaders denounced the violent crackdown. Britain's opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn called the violence shocking and urged European leaders to intervene. And the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro added his condemnation of the repression by the Rajoy-led government.
I need to confess, we've been seeing images from Catalonia with a heavy heart. Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy needs to answer to the world in regards to what he has done against the people of Catalonia. From Venezuela, I say this from my heart, from the son of Simón Bolívar. Given the history of Venezuela's rebellion, my solidarity with the Catalonian people, all my love for the Catalonian people. Catalonia has the right to democracy, to peace, to liberty.
And here's a roundup of news from around the world.
The United Kingdom's fifth largest airline has collapsed. This has caused over 100,000 passengers to be stranded abroad, and over 1,800 people have lost their jobs. The Civil Aviation Authority has chartered over 30 planes for the repatriation of passengers from destinations across Europe.
The Civil Aviation Authority have done great work in creating flights as near as possible to the Monarch schedule, so that passengers are inconvenienced as less as possible. So we are getting information from them. We have been told that we will be getting 48 hours notice for this, but obviously we're not going to get 48 hours for the first one. So I would imagine that by tomorrow or the day after, this will start going smoother, though to be very honest, it's gone quite smooth up to now.
The Myanmar government has taken a group of foreign diplomats and representatives of international aid agencies to Rakhine State in the wake of widespread reported human rights abuses committed by the government against the country's Rohingya minority. The visit comes after Myanmar blocked access to most aid workers and media at the height of the recent upsurge in violence. Kenyan police have fired tear gas at opposition supporters in the capital Nairobi and in the opposition stronghold of Kisumu. The demonstrators were calling for the sacking of officials they blame for last month's botched presidential election. A rerun is due to be held on October 26th after the Supreme Court annulled the August 8th vote due to irregularities.
Today we are being clobbered by tear gas and we don't know what we've done.
Iraqi and Iranian military forces have held joint drills along the Iraqi border in a show of collaboration following the Iraqi Kurdish independence referendum on September 25th. Iraq's regional neighbors, Turkey and Iran, joined Baghdad in dismissing the referendum, which they see as unconstitutional and invalid. At least 15 people have been killed in a set of coordinated suicide bomb attacks in the Syrian capital Damascus. The incidents were the first in the city since July. The first bomb reportedly exploded near a police station in the Al Midan neighborhood and was soon followed by 2 more blasts from lone suicide bombers. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attacks.
We've come to the end of this evening news brief. These and many other news, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Ray Gomez. Thank you for watching.